The Living Voice is a podcast exploring what shapes our voice and how our voice shapes the world. I'm your host, Yilei Lau. I'm joined by guests from diverse backgrounds as we explore voice as more than communication. We'll look at how our voice is shaped by our physical well-being, our inherited stories, the cultures and environments we move within, and the ways each of us are uniquely wired. Together, we inquire into what becomes possible when we meet our voice with kindness, awareness, and curiosity. So, welcome everybody. I am super excited to have Amanda Kent on this podcast. She is one of the first teachers I met along my journey who helped connect me with my voice in such a magnificent and wonderful way, unexpected way as well. And I'm so delighted because we've not seen each other for quite some years. So I'm like, I can feel the energy of our conversation, and we don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'm super excited. So hello, Amanda. Welcome.
Hello. It's nice to see you.
Yeah. So can you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Amanda, obviously. I never find I'm not happy with the words that I use, but I would say I'm a sound healer. It's the easiest, shortest way of saying it. And still am really a singer. I was trained in opera for quite a few years, and various experiences sort of led me to finding a different way to use my voice. And I never really planned to be a healer. I didn't even really know what that was. I was having singing lessons, and a singing teacher recommended a healer because I would get very nervous. I'd like go to auditions, or I'd start to sing something. And so she just said, go and see this healer, and I'm willing to try anything. I've done alternative therapies for a long time. So I did hypnotherapy when I was very young, like 23. And since then, so what's that, 33 years now, I've always done other things. So I went to see this healer, and really from there, she kind of never said it, but she knew I had a gift. And so the way she phrased it later on was, well, I just sort of open people to their gifts, and we see whether or not the universe needs you to use them in this lifetime, essentially. So I was seeing her, and alongside that, my yoga teacher said, oh, I'm going to this sound healing day. Why don't you come? Because I was teaching her singing at the time. And it coincided with me sitting, I've got a garden back here, a shared garden, sitting in the garden I think I was about 37. And I just remember thinking, this isn't happening. I'm not singing. I mean, I was singing a bit, but it's not, it's not doing anything. But I always could sing. From very, very young, I sang. And I thought, there must be a reason I have this gift. And I went to this one day, it was literally a day's workshop, and it was extraordinary. There were supposed to be 4 presenters. It was a day of terrible floods. The 2 women didn't arrive. We ended up with 2 guys, and they kind of were a bit overwhelmed, really, I think, by having to fill the whole day. And there was a lot of chat. And then suddenly, thank goodness, one woman stood up and went, excuse me, but can we sound? And we were like, oh, yes, yes, please. And everyone went, that would be great, because these 2 men were just, talking. And then they just did some kirtan, which I'd never done before, the call and response. And then one guy just had us standing all the way around this room. And there must have been, looking back, there must have been a couple of 100 people, because it was a big room, and we made a huge circle. And we started omming away, da da da. And then suddenly I hear, which is how I receive, I suppose, one of the ways I receive, I hear notes to sing like a tune. And I was like, oh, I can't sing that. That's really high. And I like really high and loud, bearing in mind opera training. And I thought that's going to be really disruptive. And I was omming, holding people's hands, having this conversation with what I would call angelic. And there's this like moment of, right, I can't sing that loud. That's going to be really disruptive. Then my heart started beating like bang, and I started getting faint. And I mean, it depends what your belief system. For me, it was my guides, my angels, whatever you want to call them. And they basically, I heard, because I do translate the vibration into quite clear words. And it was like, either you sound those notes or you're going to pass out, which is less disruptive.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, probably singing is less disruptive. So I did, and I was just, and then that was it. And I contacted the guy afterwards because it happened then all day, this sort of mad sort of, well, I now call it channeling. But at the time, I came from, I was not just, I would say I didn't really believe in anything, not really even agnostic. I would say I was atheist. And
Mm.
then suddenly all these sort of openings had happened over, say, 10 years. And then the culmination of that was this sort of sudden just activation, I suppose. And then after that, I just started doing some workshops with various people, and and then just one day just thought, oh, there was one other piece that was important. I had a friend colleague who, when it was not so expensive, rented out Stonehenge for a
Oh, yeah.
morning
Yeah.
with just three of us.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. And we went around and we sounded, and I was helping the energy because I connect very strongly with guardians of places. So the guardian of Stonehenge led me round, and I had to kind of clear, and because it obviously it gets a lot of mixed energies.
Mm. Mm.
And after that, it was then a second or third person said to me, "You should do that for a group." And that's when I started doing just sounding, very tiring, couldn't do it now, for an hour with just my voice, like a sound bath, but just
Just
voice.
your voice.
And I set one up, and that was probably, I don't know, 2010,
Okay.
2011.
I think that's probably
And
around the
then,
time I met you.
yeah.
Ah,
And then then it all sort of started to kick off. And then out of that came what is now the Sonic Soul Choir, and people just saying, one person after one of those just sounding sessions said, "Do you do one-to-ones?" I thought, do I do one-to-ones? Went and spoke to my still healer, now then supervisor, and I found a nice Reiki lady, and I went into some training, and that's how it all started. So, but it was quick. It's like
yeah.
it just sort of was supersonic once it started. But looking back, I can see my healer was kind of opening me up to all of that for probably, it was maybe not quite 10 years, but it wasn't far off. And all
Wow.
the stuff you do in between, yeah.
So with the
So that's,
soul,
sorry, it's a long
that's
one.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's like I didn't. I've never heard that through you, like said before. So it's quite interesting because it kind of speaks to my journey, and that's how I feel like I've been initiated by you.
Initiated's a great word, yeah.
And so like from that Stonehenge moment and then onwards, has it always been like those the group work and helping people connect with their voice and or did you like leave opera then or was it still in parallel or
So I, for quite a while, I was still doing bits of opera singing, and I've picked it up again recently, actually. But for a long time, I was really focusing on the sounding, um, and I think because at the time it was like I needed to focus, I think, on that. But I do understand that the way my voice came in my body and all the lessons I had, because I had lessons from 12, helped. But I think what that means is because as a singer, my voice is very open. I suspect that then that openness resonates to other people's voices, and other people's voices go, oh, and they get that vibration of the sound. So I still do. Recently, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years, I've picked up singing again as a hobby, which has been very nice. But I think sounding and doing it in group is amazing because particularly if you've got a group where there's one or two other people that do it very easily,
hmm.
because in that I remember once going when I was dabbling in various things. I went to a spiritualist church, that we have one here, and we were singing. And one lady turned around and she said, it's really good when you sing because it lets other people sing.
Oh,
And I think
interesting. Mm.
because and I thought that's the key, isn't it? That when you run group, you're first, because people, women in particular, we're taught to have smaller voices than we really have, even our speaking voices. One of my opera singer teachers, probably the, oh my gosh, second or third or fourth, I don't know, one who I had then for a long time, she said to me, "You're talking too high for your voice."
Oh, interesting.
So
Mm.
women in particular will slightly do this, and we'll try and, lighten the voice a bit more. When you really start to get into your body and lower the voice and let that vibration happen here, that makes a huge difference. So with group, and I've done group forever really now, as you know, we started with Divine Light Sounding and it's gone through various names. But I've found that it really helps people start to speak their truth as well when they start to sound their truth.
Mm. Oh, actually, yes. With that, because for those that are listening in or new listening into this, it's like you mentioned sounding and then singing. Like, what's the difference for you? Is there a difference between sounding and singing?
Yeah, so it's almost like they fit together, but they are two different things. I think I find when I'm sounding, I would call it channeling, really. When you first start that sort of connectivity. So for me, it's always about, and I've started to be really clear about this because we don't have the words to describe it in terms of like, it is this, this is what this is what you call it. But the experience of it, I think, is important. It's like once you start to really open just to the flow of energies, and you can be from the earth, from the universe, from around you, and you start to allow whatever is needed for that time to come through. When we first started doing choir, I would say we're sounding for the whales, we're sounding for the planet, we're sounding for, and that helped people to really connect to the idea of that. And I think the difference with singing and sounding is singing, you're trying to make a pretty sound, I think, on the whole, and you listen all the time and you're adjusting and you're quite aware of what's going on here. When you're sounding, you're just trying to really be in the heart and the soul of what is needed, and your mind ideally starts to sort of wander away a bit. We are human, our brains and minds like to go, but when you're sounding, it's a meditative state for me
Mm.
where you're just letting the energy flow in whatever way it's needed. Um, so I think the difference is when you're sounding, you're not listening to the noise that you're making. You're
Mm.
trusting to how it feels. When
Mm.
you're singing, you kind of have to listen as well as feel. And I think to me, that's quite an important difference because if you're listening, the ego is probably involved a bit. Whereas if you're just trusting, and I think that's where sounding in a group as opposed to singing is powerful because it also, because I mean, we call it Sonic Soul Sundays now, but when we're sounding for the first half, it can be cacophonous, it can be discordant, it can be the most beautiful angelic sounding you've ever heard. And it can be this, I mean, for want of a better word, we are not shamans, but that sort of shamanic earthworker drum rattle.
Mm.
And you just let it be. And you
Mm.
don't. When I first started, I would have people coming and saying, "Oh, I don't like," or I was a bit worried about the fact this woman was making these animal noises or this was happening. And I would just say, then perhaps it's not for you.
Mm.
That's your ego and your own uh, judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that one of the great things about sounding is if you can let go of the judgment of your own voice, you are letting, on your own voice. I think you start to let go of your judgment on yourself. You can just make the noise. Because as children, women in particular, but certainly our generation and older, we were not allowed to make noise. We were not allowed to
Mm,
have tantrums. It was discouraged. So if we can honor those noises, whatever they are, and then honoring the human noise and then letting the energetic noise come through with no judgment, it's a pourful thing.
fantastic. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, of course.
Biased. I've got so many different questions and so many different directions we could go because you also mentioned that's why I'm seeing Stonehenge and singing or sounding for the land at different places. Can you talk a bit more about that and like what does that mean for you? Like when you were sounding and you were clearing places, is that work still there or still alive, or you feel like that's not a thing as such these
Um,
days?
I I think I do still get guided to do it. But I also feel um like the next day retreat I'm doing, there will be half a day at Avebury Henge, which is the one just down the road from Stonehenge. I think for me, it's like I would say I don't feel the need to do so much clearing anymore. We used to do like clearing for the land, clearing for the water, and I think there are people that still do that. I'm not sure at this stage in my life that's my job anymore. I feel like
Mm,
I was at Stonehenge for it was the autumn equinox with a group, and we sounded both outside the henge as the sun was rising, and then inside the henge there was my little group of maybe 10 of us, and then this big group of young ones drumming and sounding and dancing, and we ended up sort of doing this beautiful beautiful cohesive sort of sounding together. But I felt at one point energetically handing it over to the younger ones and going, okay, now this is now your job. I
mm,
feel at this age in menopause and croning and croned, my job now is more about gratitude and connection with the earth. So that I think is the difference for me now.
mm.
I've done 10 years of this sort of going to the ocean and clearing the ocean and going to the spaces and clearing the spaces. Now it feels more like using sound to do more ceremony, more gratitude, more connectivity, more like delving deeper into the earthly energies and working collectively more than having to see it as a separate job to do, more as a sort of co-creation and co-consciousness with the earth and the universe all together in one sort of connectivity using sound. That's where
Nice.
drumming and rattling and that kind of dancing and that's why it's so. I remember reading someone was complaining about the drumming and the sounding at Stonehenge, and I thought this is someone who does not understand that human beings have always done that.
Yeah,
We've always sung and danced and drummed. That's what we do to connect with each other, with the land. So I
absolutely.
would say I feel that part is done. Like I did 10 years of earth work in that way. Now my job is more about, and I think that is part of croning. As a crone, you sort of connect to this sort of, for me, it feels like a cavern space. It's deeper and
Mm,
darker and stiller, and you can go further in,
yeah.
and therefore I'm more able to work with the deeper sort of shadowy stuff for people and the earth. I've always had great friends with the beings of the earth, and they love the sounding. They're like the inner realm guardians, the energies that reside in the planet. They love drumming and sounding, and so yeah. So now for me, it's more about working collect. I mean, it was always like working with them, but now it's more like a much more cohesive connection with
Nice.
through sound with it. Yeah.
So you mentioned ceremony, like more ceremony. What does that look like for you? Because for me, like it felt like you always had that, but I guess has that changed for you in the way you do ceremony with sound
I
and
think
voice? Yeah.
I think I have more of a sort of one of the things I really am working towards is how to do ceremony in a way that is authentic to this land. That feels important. That I've this is my genetic home, and I've lived here my whole life, and there's a power to this land. So it's bringing in the way it's changed a little bit is bringing in the energies of this particular island and the water that surrounds it and the sacred spaces and the stones and the woods and all those sort of guardian spirits that I connect with just as I've moved around this island, traveling or whatever, but also connecting to the because in Britain there's very little truly passed down of our indigenous knowledge, and and it's very blocked for me by very male orientated druids and paganism, and for me that just doesn't resonate. So I'm looking and working with developing ceremonies with drum, with rattle, with the earth, but also connecting to our ancient powers. Like we have bog oak in this country that's like 5, 6, 10,000 years old, connecting to those energies, connecting to the energies of the stones, but the mountains and the valleys, and how we bring that in collectively as well. And then adding into that the power of I do live in London, and the strange melee energy that we have in London actually is so potent. It's because it's so extreme. But if you sit in the middle space of it, there's this absolute people who have clients who are in Europe or in America, and they will come here to reconnect to this power base. So there's that too. So we add all of it in, the modern stuff, the old stuff. So for me, ceremony is in a shifting way at the moment. I find that I'm looking for new ways to connect
Mm,
to the potency of this land, I think is what I'm trying to
nice.
say. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
nice way of putting it. I guess it's to
Mm.
also honor the modern day, I guess, the modern day lifestyles as
As
well, and
well.
how to yeah, speak to that energy. It sounds like, and also make it accessible for people. Um,
Exactly.
wow, that's amazing. And thanks for
Yeah.
clarifying where you live, because I was like, oh, we haven't mentioned where you're
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you're from.
Yeah.
So London, which is a real mixture of energies, and I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
definitely enjoyed my time there for sure. So is there a lot of people like what are the types of people that come and see you that are drawn to you? And I know we had before the recording, you mentioned this kind of profile of people that people really get it, which is a high percentage, but then there's some that just don't. Like, what sort of people come to see you?
It's a real mix of people, and also ages. I have women in their 80s and men, and then children come as well. Um, and it's I think is when I first started work, because I'm quite psychic, I would give almost too much information about what I could see and what was clearing through. Because for me, sound and vibration acts almost like a waterfall in my mind. It's like people standing under a waterfall of energy and light, which is what the sound brings through and clearing. But as time went on, I never really cleared one lifetime at a time. If I was working, say, with past lives, it's a good example. I would always find myself going to the lifetime that created it and then clearing. But as time's gone on, I thought I don't think people need all that information. I just, really, if somebody asks me a question, I'll answer it. But I feel on the whole, what I attract is people who are looking to. Years ago, I said to the universe, because people kept saying, back in the day, people would be like, "Ooh, what's your elevator pitch? What's your mission statement?" I'm like, "I don't know." So I said to the universe, "Come on then, give me a mission statement." And it said, "Connect and be."
Wow.
And
Mm.
that was a long time ago. It's probably 16, 17 years ago. And it's those people. It's people that want to let go of the mind. I was born feet first, slightly twisted, so my crown chakra never shut. So I always say I have open sky brain. So I was always very open. So I'm like this.
Nice.
which is challenging when you're growing up, but doing what we do, it's useful. And I think that the people that come to me is they want to sit in that, in their own ability to let go of their human experience and connect purely to the flow of energy and to
Mm.
let go. So that tends to be the people that I attract. But I also have people with more chronic stuff going on
Mm,
who
okay.
come to rest and be supported as well. But most of my clients are people who really understand that we are more than this. That we are. This is only a part of our experience, um, and that connect to sound. I mean, I do think that's part of it. We were talking earlier, weren't we? I mean, gong is always a good entry point for people. If people come and I can feel they're not sure, particularly men, obviously the older men, they still feel they need to control a bit. But you give them gong for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and they settle and they start to get it. So I would say I have a wide variety of clients from all sorts of walks of life. Um, but I think the key is that it, you, I think you have to have at least a curiosity about the fact there is more.
Mm.
Mm.
And what do you feel? Because it's talking about like you've got this yummy awareness of the influences that come through you, but like, has there been moments where other things may have influenced and shaped your voice? And has that? And you said you mentioned about you this high speaking voice and it's dropped. Like, was
Hmm.
that a conscious shift, or over time you just noticed you just dropped more comfortably into your skin?
I think that was a conscious shift. That was when my teacher said to me, "You talk too high." I thought, "Yeah, I think I do." Um, and sometimes my voice can be a bit low now. It can get really low, and I think that was there's something about honoring where the true potency of the female power, I think, in the voice. Women use our voice. I mean, everybody does, but I'm a woman, so I'm going to specifically talk about being a female. But, we use our voice for so many things, for reassurance, for singing to the children, lullabies, but also when we're being in our protective mode of people we love, and so I think that was a very conscious thing. And I think I meant to say earlier, what's fascinating to me as well is I have to remember, I said when we used to do choir, we'd start by I'd say, oh, we're going to sing for the whales, we're going to sing.
Mm.
And also, when I first started sounding, I would be very specific about who was coming through. So I would find that I would be working with various, for want of a better word, sound guides. So there was a very old Peruvian woman that used to come through, and I'd be like, sounding down here. And then I'd sometimes like an indigenous North American person would come through, and I'd be sounding, and I'd be very clear at the beginning who was coming through, what energy it was, what experience that was, whether it was angelic, whether it was guide, whether it was earth. Sometimes we still get this kind of lovely little silly little fairy singing. They're very cute little sounds they make. But I think you have to start there. You have to start with a knowing of what you're bringing through, and that felt important at the time to what you're saying. Where the steps were the first, I think when I first started sounding, I realized at that time, because it was new to me, I needed to know that they were of light
Mm-hmm.
and positive. I needed to check in quite a lot. So I always, when I first started, don't need to do it now, but when I first started, if I felt a sound guide step in, whether it was with the gong or with sounding, I would always ask, are you of light? Are you of light? Are you of light?
Mm.
And they have to say yes 3 times before I would then sound their sound. And then after a while, you get used to if you get a no, you send them away, you start to know what that feels like. And
Mm.
then it started to just be a flow. But at the beginning, lowering the voice, finding my true resonance of voice inside the body on a human level, talking, that felt important. And then when I started sounding, being very careful and clear, is this appropriate? Is this in alignment? Is it of light?
Mm.
And then you start to feel what that feels like, and then you can let it through the body.
Yeah.
Um, is that sort of that, you know, is that helpful? That
Yeah, no,
those sort of
yeah, no, totally. And I've got so many questions running through when you're talking because I'm reminded of like, I guess there's that passive, as in receiving sound, which is how I first met you.
mhm,
I think at the Swiss church
church, yeah.
in London, where people with sleeping bags, and even then, like it's interesting how sound healing or sound bathing, sound in there, it's just exploded. But back then, to me, was
Yeah,
still quite
nobody was
new.
doing it. Yeah, yeah,
And you walking around with your chimes and you're singing and you did this, I
yeah,
think it was light language, and I started crying. So that was like very
yeah.
receptive, and I think you were doing sounding for singing as a class
Of
because I was
course,
like,
yeah,
I'm bawling my eyes out. I need to sign up
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
I'm just like, what's happening? Um, so I guess my question is like, are you still doing those divine light sound bars, or is it more now interactive and your people are sounding with you? And
I mean, I don't just do it with the voice, but I do still do it. So I run various things. So obviously, I do lots of one-to-ones, but I do those online as well, which is a bit crazy, but it seems to work these days because, you know, Zoom. So that sounding was very wearing on my voice. You know, your voice, your actual physical voice box is a delicate tool. And I realized that it was never going to attract enough people. We were talking practically earlier, you have to do some sums and you have to do what's going to work. And and I felt like if I could do it for 50 people once a month, it would be worth doing, but it was starting to wear the body and it just because sound is does do this for people. It's quite confronting. It does bring stuff up for people, whether you're just sounding or whether you're encouraging the person to sound. So I started to just do the choirs. But during the choir, so Sonic Soul Choir, there will be moments where the sound drops away and then that sort of more angelic sounding will come in and somehow the group always just drop and that sound comes and I do that sound. And same with day retreats. And I'm running this course at the moment. I'm doing a 6-month course, 1 day a month, and the same. So it still happens, just more as part of something else rather than just me sounding. So even when I'm doing gong bath, which I don't do group gong bath particularly anymore, but I've started to combine an hour of sonic soul choir with an hour of gong bath.
mm,
But even during gong, I'd find I do still bring through that sounding
mm.
and the drumming. So it's still part of what I do
So
because
when
it's the
you,
piece.
oh yeah,
Mm.
sorry.
No, it's the piece that cuts through a lot, the particularly very high angelic
Mm,
sounding. It really cuts through trauma and opens people's souls back up. It
mm.
kind of calls people's souls back into their bodies.
Because when you're saying you're bringing, you can sense the beings in and able to provide that information for people. What context is that? Is that when you're doing the group sonic and go, okay, this energy's coming through?
Well, now I don't do it. I can still identify it, but now I just let we even with choir we just let it flow. So now it just flows. There's no stopping and starting,
Hmm.
and we know we'll start and it will just do this thing. And you'll find afterwards you'll talk to people, and people generally agree with where we were at what point we were sounding for what. Um, so yeah, it's moved on a bit from there, but I will still, if I needed to identify, I would still know.
Hmm.
But it's that thing of allowing the open sky brain to take over and just allowing the flow to happen
Yeah, nice.
rather than having to identify each, section.
And what changes have you seen in people? Because you said like there's quite a lot of regular, steady crew and those that have come and gone. What sort of changes have people reported or you've witnessed yourself?
I think what you find the biggest change in people is people just being more in that sort of flow state, where because you're, once a month or whenever you're choosing to come, you allow things to just flow through. People sort of say they find it easier to just let things flow through them. Hollow boning, do you know that phrase, hollow boning?
Yeah.
Such a key thing. And of course, when you're sounding, you're kind of experiencing that properly, aren't you? Where you hollow boning being you open yourself up to the light and you become like a hollow bone and everything just passes through you. So people report sort of being able to do that with more ease, being able to be in group with more ease. One of the
Mm,
things I attract a lot is people who struggle with being in a group
that was
because of
me.
they yes, but that's a lot of my people. They'll come to me and be in my groups because they feel safe, and that for me is a big thing that I am helping people be able to be with other people because we need to do that. It's important to come physically together where we can and join together and do that. And also just people finding their voice. They get huge activations, and people who come have been coming for years, their voices have gone through these beautiful changes. People have these extraordinary ability to channel whatever they're called to channel. People who used to sound like this, they've got full sounding voices now, and also I think just for them, the other thing I get from people is they're able to speak their truth a lot more and be much more honest and upfront
Yeah.
about things with people around them. So I think on all those levels, it's really powerful. Even on, take away, you don't have to believe in any of this stuff. Just sounding as a human being together, not singing, sounding, and letting everybody be where they are, not listening to what anybody else is doing is a powerful thing. Let yourself sound, let yourself make the noise you want to make.
Fantastic. I love it. Yes. I can feel, do you feel that voice is, I guess, coming in more for people? I know you work in this area, but have you seen ebbs and flows of people coming and going, or it's been quite steady,
It's been quite
steady?
consistent,
Yeah.
yeah. And when I occasionally add in a little bit of singing technique, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them really enjoyed that. It's because that thing of being able to just because I think sometimes feel people when they're sounding feel restricted by their ability to make sound. So when I gently sort of start doing little singing exercises. When we did the singing for sounding workshops, it
Mm,
really helped people understand, oh, if I just relax my jaw and take a big breath in with my mouth open, more sound can come out. Just encouraging people when they take a breath, just to rest a finger on your chin,
mm,
those sorts of things really make a huge difference. And yeah, and I think people are opening more and more to it. And the young ones in particular, when they really get sound healing. I do think
mm.
that. Um, I've had people come and they've had lots of other sort of body work and that kind of thing. And people in their sort of under 30s will say, oh no, I get this much more than the other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I think
Ah,
this is their generation. And
why?
they're much more able because they come in so open, they're much more able to go, they bring the sound through and let it wash through them. And they're like, oh, I don't need that. Or I don't need that without really having to
Ah,
think about it.
think
Yeah.
about it. I was gonna say, why do you think that is? And it's maybe because it's that there is no there is no thinking. Uh,
Yeah, I think they come in with their chakras are slightly. I think. I mean, they used to say they're coming in more open, and I think that's correct to an extent. But also, just trauma for everybody creates slight tightness in the chakras. But I do think that their energy centers are just a bit softer and a bit more able to go, oh, okay.
mm,
So there's every generation's different,
bringing a
isn't it?
different
Yeah,
quality.
yeah, yeah.
So I was like, where should we go now with this topic? Like, what's alive for you right now? Then, because we've talked about like lovely work. So, what's sparking your world at the moment?
Well, I mean, interesting for me. I feel like there's something about doing bigger groups and getting more people together. And like I have this lovely studio that I use in Croydon, but it is restrictive with numbers. So I had it booked for a retreat in the autumn, and I just felt no, I need a room that can take 10 or can take 30, and it so that the group can be whatever it needs to be rather than it having to be this particular amount of people. And I got strong guidance to sort of be on Instagram and just the course I'm running at the moment. They've some of my clients abroad have asked me to see if I can set it up online. I do work online sometimes in group. It may or may not happen. It's not clear yet to me, but I feel like that's part of it. And I think that's to your question just now. I think people are becoming more and more open to new ways of connecting. And I think it's that piece of not is how do we my feeling is it's like we need to get more people together to experience the not needing to think all the time, to not needing to name everything, you know, to just be, connect and be and
Mm.
experience that. So what's big for me at the moment really is just encouraging bigger groups to come together and experience what that will be like. What is it like if you're in a group of 20 rather than 12? When
Mm.
the group has to hold the energy more than just me, I can't hold, you do this piece of holding, but when in a bigger group, once you get over about 12 or 13, you can't hold for every individual, which you can in a smaller group. But then isn't that where we are now, that these bigger groups can come together and it becomes like a whole field of the consciousness with the group holding. So you're sort of grounding and holding the space, but the group together collectively hold and clear and expand. So for me, that's I can see that's what the next piece is.
Oh, that's exciting.
I
I'm
know.
kind of answering my next question, which, unless there's a little bit more we can add to this, it's like, what would you like to see humanity voice more of in the world?
I mean, I live in London. Kindness is the answer to that.
Kindness.
Um, yeah. And just I think I think as well there's something, isn't there, about allowing voice to ebb and flow so that you're um there's ebbing and flowing and then there's being aware of your own what you're adding into the noise of voice as well. There's something about that around just making sure you are still listening well
Mm.
when we're talking about talking and communicating. You see so much in the world of just people on send, people in their own unconscious bias, like that's just fact. And if we can more and more just soften, and all we can do is model it in our own bodies and our own beings, and then bringing people together to sound in this non-judgmental way is so freeing. So allowing that to happen more. I mean, I love the fact in modern culture, in pop music. I mean, there was that film, wasn't there? K-pop Demon Hunters.
Oh, yeah.
People talk much more about the light and the dark and the shadow and the fact that we are both. And I think it is definitely coming more out into the mainstream, and voice and sound more than anything can express light in a way nothing else can
Mm. Mm.
because however you emanate the light through sound, everyone can receive it. If you try and just emanate light through energy, a lot of people can receive it, but a lot of people can't. It's that thing of, when I used to do sound baths for a school, there'd be 100 girls in front of me, and 50 of them would completely kind of get it. And then 25% would really get it, and then 25% would not get it. And I think, if you're talking about voice in the world, it's like really what we have to do is just be in our energy of light and emanate it however we can, in whatever vibration we can. And
Mm.
it really does shift people. Yeah.
That's interesting. Can you speak more about, because we talked about light quite a lot, like what is if it's an opposite, or what's the, we talked about shadow or darkness, and you're very clear about who's coming in terms of what energy, and just kind of like being the bodyguard, if you like, to go,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
oi, who's that? um, is there a space? What am I speaking to here? Um, what would you call it? Like darker energies or shadow energies, or like what about that? I call it grunty energies that may also require a space. Like, what point of view do you have around that?
Well, it depends what you're doing. So if you are so so if you think for me, if you think about light for me is the energy of the universe. So there's the universe, and the energy of light is what brings through the potency. So the energy of the universe is like the collective field, or however you want to call it, and light is the sort of and it can be, people use different words, starlight, angels, whatever, that kind of light energy. So if you're talking about light, that's what I would say. When I'm speaking about being clear about what's coming through, I don't allow anything that is not for the highest good of all to speak through me, in terms of what is beyond our human perception. If
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about shadow, and I would differentiate between light and dark being light of the energy of the universe of positivity, dark being energy that is coming in that is against the development of humankind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just for me, that's how I would define it. But then
Mm.
if we're talking about shadow, that's for me, I would talk about shadow in terms of the way I express it is probably more of a Jungian way. So you'd have the wounded child and its shadow. Here's the inner child. It hasn't experienced the wounded child, and the shadow separate, and the shadow wanders off over here. And this part, we have this sort of part of us that we drag around and flares up every now and then. Sounding the shadow can be really useful.
Mm.
If you're so as a sort of healing for the human and the traumatic experiences, allowing the shadow to sound through it can be really powerful and
Mm.
important. Sometimes one of the most powerful expressions of that I've done would be on retreat and in sort of deeper classes like the course we're doing, because it can be very activating, so you have to be in a very held space, I think, to do it, is allowing the child to cry
Mm.
and letting that very baby screaming coming through. And then that can also let any and then that can go then into shadow expression, anger, and so all of that can be so important as well. So yeah, definitely, if you're looking at, if there's a moment when I'm doing a day retreat, or probably not so much a day retreat but an ongoing course.
Yes, like a, hey, come along to this day workshop.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, my, I mean, I am a bit of a, excavator. I'm not somebody, I always say it's deep work. It's probably not for somebody who just wants a nice sort of gong bath. Probably not the right person. Um, but yeah, and also if it's people that trust me, I think that's the other thing. If I know everybody, and I know, and that comes through, and I think, okay, we've got to do this, because I do everything guided. I sort of have a vague plan, but I will just, sometimes that is not what happens, because it will depend who's there. So yes, to what you're asking me, it can absolutely be, voice can be a really powerful way to express shadow, because shadows are the parts of us that we were not allowed to express. So
Mm.
if we allow them voice, then they can usually
Fantastic.
reintegrate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for making that distinction, because I'm sensing that there's quite a few people that may muddle or group together shadow and dark, and then these words, and just galump them
Them
into one
together. Yeah.
category.
Yeah.
As I actually know, there's a distinction between parts of self that need also a space and a place in the
Yeah.
world versus, and I really like your description of like, actually there's forces that are maybe not a contribution to our consciousness of the planet and the being
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
person. So yeah, that's a really good way of
Yeah.
distinguishing those
Yeah. It
things.
feels important to have clarity, I think. Um, like for me, if I'm talking about light beings, I do differentiate between, I think of light, angel, and star beings as being positive, but then there are these other beings who are non-benevolent, and I think we should be clearer about it. I think people are not clear enough, and we need to be clear about when things are for our highest good and when they are not. And yeah.
No, totally. But also to, I guess, give them a place as well, or acknowledgement to kind of go, oh yeah, I see you,
Yeah.
but not this party. Yeah.
Yeah, not this party. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we can always, and I usually do, if I'm doing any sort of clearing like that, we can always send them light, because usually that's what all beings want. Every being has, I think the thing, and also we mustn't sort of demonize in any way really, because every being, when I look at, I once, if you imagine our souls are this is very linear, but if you imagine our souls are supposed to be the size of like a basketball, and then past life experience, trauma just makes our souls reduce, right? And then the work we do, I think, is to just let all of that, try and get it to re-expand, so that then the soul just can expand and connect through the portal of the heart into the universe, and allow all that through. But when I look, all beings have at least a sort of new moon slither of light. Even the non-benevolence, we are, this is where, for me, it doesn't matter whether you think you're from the star or an angel or whatever, because all beings are from light and the universe, and that's all that really matters. Our souls were all created in a soul nursery that was this, this arrival. And like when you see nebulas on, they take these amazing pictures now of star nurseries, and you see all that energy coming together to create a star. It's the same with the souls, and every being has an element of light in their soul. So even the less benevolent beings, we can still go, we're not here, but here, have some light if you want it. Otherwise, bye bye.
Yeah.
And that feels important as well. So
Nicely
it's not
put.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
important, I think.
It's like good luck with that role. Hey,
Yeah,
see ya.
yeah, that's your incarnation. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Doing well.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like when people will talk about the demonics down in the lower realms, and I'm like, they don't feel like demonics to me. They're just like slightly lower vibrational elementals, really.
Yeah.
They're of fire and earth, and yes, they feel denser, but they're still, just doing their thing.
Part of creation. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for putting words to that.
That's okay.
So now we're coming towards the end. Is there anything else you feel is sitting there that would like to emerge around the voice and what people would like to hear?
I think I think the thing that's coming through to say is actually a very technical, well, not even technical, a really easy thing is whenever you're anywhere where you think you want to make noise and don't feel you can, just hum. And it feels important to say that. It's like not everybody needs to be a singer, but if you're sitting in a space, where there's a possibility of making sound, just hum. Let this energy center just vibrate and see how that feels. And playing between the kind of the vibration, like can you hum to hear and hum to hear, and what does that feel like? And just hum. If you can't do anything else, just hum and see how that is.
Just hum. Love
Just
it.
hum.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
So I think that feels
fantastic.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Accessible, easy, and yeah, so
Yeah.
beautiful. So, where can people find you if they want to look for you? Where's the best place for people to access your
Um,
work?
I'm on I'm probably I've got a website. Do you want the thing? It's just amandajkent.com. And then I am now on Instagram, which is interesting. Not
Yay!
done that. That's new. And that's amandakent.soundhealing, healer, I think. I've got some bits on YouTube, but that's still sort of rumbling around. But the easiest way to get hold of me is just email or, yeah.
Fabulous. And we'll put the links in the show notes.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much for connecting in this
You're
way. It's so
welcome.
good to see you and hear
It's
you.
so nice to see you.
And
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
there's probably a part two, so we'll have you on another time, I guess,
Yeah,
after
yeah.
things moved on through this
Yeah,
year
yeah.
and all the changes and where we've landed.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you again so much. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you and hearing you again soon.
Ah, well, thank you too. You feel amazing. Yay.
You're welcome.